I'd like to welcome members of the public, colleagues and officers to this evening's meeting, which I'll be chairing. To manage the business as efficiently as possible, I'll invite people to speak one at a time to ensure that their contributions are properly heard. Therefore, please do not speak unless invited to do so. Thank you in advance for your assistance. Fire evacuation procedure: on hearing the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately using the nearest available exit. Do not, under any circumstances, use the lift. The assembly point is in the area outside the Civic Office's car park, next to the small roundabout. You should not attempt to re-enter the building until it is known to be safe to do so. Item 1 on our agenda is communications and apologies for absence. I have no communications, and apologies have been received from Councillor Matthews. Item number 2, presentation of petitions. There are none for presentation this evening. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare? I see none. Agenda item 4, speeches by non-cabinet members. The usual rules apply. Visiting members attending the meeting may speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any individual item on the agenda, with a maximum of 5 members per item, no more than 2 from any one political group. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Cohen and Councillor Rosehill. I don't think I've missed anybody out. Item 5 is minutes of the previous meeting. The members happy for me to sign the minutes of the meeting held on 16th of October 2025? Thank you. I'll sign them after the meeting in order to save time. Item number 6, recommendations from scrutiny committees. After a sort of 2.5-year drought, they seem to be coming in more regularly, 2 in a row. We have one recommendation on our agenda today from the Policy Review Committee, and this is the report of the Houses in Multiple Occupation Task and Finish Group. Members will find this included in their agenda pack as item 6.1. The report presents the recommendations arising from that task and finish group, and this evening, as is the protocol, Cabinet are simply asked to note these recommendations for consideration, and they will return to this Cabinet within a 2-month period for debate of a full officer report and discussion as to whether or not all or some of them will be accepted and acted upon. Are Cabinet members happy to note this report? Thank you. So on that basis, we shall move to agenda item 7, which is key decisions. Agenda item 7.1, the statement of community involvement 2025 for approval, and I will move to Councillor Oakley to present this item.
Thank you, Leader. Members will have seen this a number of times during the draft stage. It's now been out to public consultation, and we have made a few minor changes with the responses that we've actually had. So I would like to thank all the residents and other stakeholders who took time to comment on the document, which is a statutory one that we need to produce. I'd also actually like to take the officers, or thank the officers for all their hard work on drafting this, and obviously going through all the responses that we actually received. And I would like to move the recommendation that it now goes forward to full council.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. Members, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. We all know that engagement is key, not just a process, but the foundation of trust between the council and our residents. People want to feel that their views genuinely shape the places where they live, work and raise families. Engagement must therefore be meaningful, not just procedural. It has to show that listening leads to learning and to action. That's why this statement of community involvement is so important. It sets out how we as a council would communicate and consult on planning matters, from major developments to the local plan itself. It gives residents clarity on when and how they can get involved, and it holds us to account for ensuring those consultations are open, accessible and transparent. I welcome the updated approach, especially the focus on digital tools and social media to reach more people, and the recognition of groups who are often underrepresented in planning conversations, and these are positive step forwards. But the real challenge is consistency, making sure the principles in this document are applied fairly and effectively every time. Residents often tell us that consultation feels one-sided. To rebuild confidence, we need to ensure that engagement is not only frequent but influential. That means clear feedback loops, genuine pre-application dialogue, and visible outcomes from what people tell us. We also need to maintain professionalism, particularly where councillors or officers communicate publicly. Our duty is to enable an open conversation, not to preempt its outcome. We need to represent full facts and details to our residents so they can make informed decisions. I urge us not to treat it as a box-ticking document, but as a living commitment, one that ensures every resident's voice has the opportunity to shape our borough's future in a fair, consistent and meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. People in our borough, as we know, want a real say in what happens on their doorstep. We're hearing that everywhere. We see it on social media. And this statement of community involvement should be more than a statutory exercise. It's meant to show residents that their voices actually count. And residents are certainly trying. The fact that so many people responded to this consultation proves it. But with no local plan in place and speculative planning applications popping up all over, especially on our greenbelt, it feels like things are actually slipping out of our residents' hands. They're frustrated and they keep asking everywhere, when do we get to shape where we live, instead of reacting to every new scheme a developer puts in front of us. This is why getting real community involvement is now more urgent than ever, not just in the documents we approve like tonight, but in the way we act as councillors. And here's where I want to be honest. When Cabinet members post about planning issues on Facebook, sometimes before any decision is made...
Sorry, Councillor Cohen, could you restrict your remarks to the item on the agenda, please?
It's about community involvement.
If you're unable to restrict your remarks to the item on the agenda, I'll have to ask you to stop. If you would like to speak again about the statement of community involvement that is in front of us and tabled for discussion today, then I'm happy for you to continue.
Well, it is, because it's about involvement in social media, and this is what this is about, what I'm speaking about. People ask about, is this council policy? Is this what's going to happen? And that's a big problem, because our words, as this shows, offline and online matter, and we have to be careful. At a time like this, when public trust is shaky and there's no local plan in place, a careless comment, and this is what it's about, can do real damage. So please, we need to think before we post. We need to be clear about what's official and what's just personal opinion. People need certainty now more than ever, and that starts with us as our elected representatives being consistent and transparent in everything we do, whether it's a council meeting or a Facebook post. Residents don't want to be kept in the dark or treated like an afterthought. They want to and need to be involved and shape the future of our borough alongside us. If we keep putting off the local plan and aren't careful in what we say, we'll just give people more reasons to feel left out and lose faith. And this is certainly happening. We need to make sure people know what we mean and that what we say is what we mean, both in council and in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from members, visiting members? No, we will... sorry, Councillor Rosehill.
It was one comment on the first agenda item, which was hopefully one of the Cabinet members can answer, which is if the Task and Finish group essentially demanded that the Article 4 be introduced.
Yes, so we're on the agenda item relating to statement of community involvement. If you've got a more general point on the HMO piece, we do have another HMO item on the agenda later in the meeting, so I'd encourage you to bring it up there. Members. Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just come back on what Councillor Cohen is actually saying. He is constantly saying that there is no local plan in progress. We have an emerging revised local plan. We have a timetable on our website in the local development scheme which clearly states how we are progressing. It is there for everyone to see, and we are open and honest about how it is progressing. We have basically gone through a huge procurement process on this to get the evidence bases we need to progress. Councillor Cohen is also a member of the Members' Planning Panel, which is actually meeting on the 24th, and he will be able to see that, and he is quite aware of what the process is. But there seems to be a huge difference between what we're putting out, what we're saying, and what I'm constantly reminding our residents about in terms of how this is being done and why it's taking longer than we originally envisaged. And he is actually causing, I would say, a lot of worry amongst residents because of the things that his group and his fellow members are actually saying.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. I think your remarks were very gracious, given the fact that a large part of the reason we're having to do any of this is because his local plan fell apart, had to be shelved, and then they did nothing for 18 months and left the cupboard bare. Any further comments from Cabinet members? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I'm obviously in full support of this, but I probably need to check with Councillor Cohen that I'm allowed to say that, because he seems to be drumming the mantra from their opposition benches that members are only allowed to say what they believe we're allowed to say. We have opinions, we're allowed to talk about them. We're independent-minded people, we're allowed to have those views. But I fully support this document and we'll be voting for it this evening.
Anything further from Cabinet members? If not, are members happy to agree the recommendation that we now take the draft statement of community involvement forward to the next meeting of full council for approval? Agreed. Thank you.
A point of order, please, which I'd like to ask our council solicitor. Under item 6.1, the Cabinet is asked to consider and respond to the recommendations of the policy review. We spent hours and hours of preparing a report. We've not had the chance to present it or make any comments about it tonight, which we did at the last Cabinet when we presented it. I think you missed it out, so can we please have the chance to present our report to Cabinet, because that's what it says under 6.1.
You don't get to raise points of order as a visiting member, but I am happy to address the point. I didn't miss anything out. You will recall that in terms of the report presented by the start and finish task group on communications, we did allow exceptionally for that to be presented in full at its first appearance at Cabinet, which has never been the case with a scrutiny report before. Presentations and discussion always come when the 8-week period has elapsed. I have been advised that there is no protocol by which a debate on a scrutiny report takes place automatically at its first appearance at Cabinet. However, so let me finish, I do accept that if a report has been prepared and somebody wishes to speak to it, we ought to have the flexibility to do that, and I will address that later in the meeting, but we will not be having a full-blown debate and discussion on it, because that is simply not how the scrutiny process has ever worked at this council. If people want to bring forward changes to that, then the correct place to do it is at CMDP. I would also add that this is now the second time we've received what is effectively an officer's cover note and a set of appendices, but we haven't actually received the full report from the scrutiny committee in the manner that was always the case previously. It was always the case that start and finish groups did the work, their lead members wrote a full report, and the officer's cover note was provided in addition to that. So given the lack of a full report, I'm not desperately sympathetic to pleas for special treatment.
I'm sorry, I don't think you're correct at all, Councillor Newmark. I'd like to look into that. But this is not for debate. This is us to have the courtesy to present the report that we have spent hours and weeks providing. You go on and on about us not doing it. There is no point...
Sorry, Councillor Cohen.
Just give us the chance to present the report.
Councillor Cohen, you are not the lead member. You are not the lead member. You are not the lead member of this task and finish group. The lead member of the Task and Finish group did not raise a concern when I dealt with the item. If she had raised a concern when I dealt with the item, I would have very graciously done exactly what I said I would do a moment ago and look for a way in which she could present some remarks on the report. She failed to do so. I don't think she needs you to speak on her behalf. Councillor Sullivan, do you have anything to say?
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. I think it is a shame that it's come to this, because if I went on last Cabinet meeting where we brought the recommendation forward, which I did on behalf of Councillor Cohen as lead member on communications, and he wasn't here, I presented that. We've got a lot of people, I don't know how many people are watching online, we've got members of the public in the room, and we're not being consistent in our communication to the public. This Task and Finish group has been worked on. If I was going by last Cabinet, we were allowed to bring the recommendations forward. The report is here in full, so I think we need to re-clarify that. The whole report is here. It's actually 86 pages of report, appendices, research that are here. So I don't understand why Cabinet would not want us to read a recommendation to give clarity for residents who exactly feel like they're not being listened to. I don't understand why we wouldn't allow that compared to what happened last time in Cabinet. It's not consistent.
Successive oppositions over the period of 24 years of Conservative administration operated on the basis that I have just outlined. I appreciate that you are, Pat, struggling still to come to terms with being the opposition, but as I said very clearly to Councillor Cohen, I'm more than happy to find a moment in the meeting when we've discharged the official decision-making process for you to deliver that report. Had you made an intervention at the correct point in the agenda, I would have allowed it then. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is 8.1, the Boreham Wood Culture and Leisure Destination Feasibility and Business Case, which I will introduce. This is a really exciting report, actually. It's a additional dimension or layer on top of the ongoing work around the Boreham Wood regeneration project. The members will be aware that project is a long-term piece of work looking at opportunities to regenerate the area from Elstree Station along the High Street, around the Triangle, taking on to the Brook Road, Meadow Park, Maxwell Park, down towards Sky Studios at Rowley Lane. As a result of the initial economic and business cases that have now been completed, it has become apparent that there are some more immediate opportunities that arise to create a culture and leisure destination effectively in that triangle between Elstree Studios, Civic Offices Car Park, Meadow Park and Maxwell Park. There are opportunities to develop sites including the Civic Offices Car Park. There are opportunities to look at relocation or perhaps an additional cinema facility. There is obviously the siting of the proposed immersive experience and a whole host of opportunities to turn underdeveloped or undeveloped pieces of brownfield land into what would effectively represent a leisure cluster, together with the existing leisure centre and hotel accommodation that already exists in that area. An opportunity has arisen for Inner Circle, the consultants who had undertaken the original economic and business cases, to do this work, and there's obviously an economy of scale because they did the two original reports and a lot of that knowledge will carry over. However, there is a limited window of opportunity, which is why this report is coming forward now. I'm going to pass briefly to our Head of Asset Management, Andrew Don, and ask him if there is anything specific he wants to highlight in the proposal in front of us.
Thanks, Councillor. The only thing I would say is that the key outputs here are a feasibility on this very specific site, and that links into the wider framework and will underpin some of the local plan as well. So important piece of work. We need to move it forward quickly if we want to engage with the current supplier, otherwise their resources will disappear, and work on another project. But that's the key output.
Thank you, Andrew. Visiting members. Councillor Rosehill.
Just one simple point. I was wondering if there's any community or business consultation that's been done prior to obviously spending a great deal of money on external consultation. And I'm wondering also, just for residents' benefit, if there's any KPIs or timeline that we could associate with this project as well.
Obviously, this is a feasibility study, but as part of the business and financial cases that have already been done on the economic regeneration work, there's been extensive consultation, actually far more than consultation, and active engagement of a stakeholder group, including all of the major businesses in the area, including the landlords and owners of publicly owned sites within the proposed regeneration area. There have been 2 half-day workshops with them. The County Council, the Police and Crime Commissioner, who are also large landholders within the area, have been involved, and it's actually partly as a result of the conversations that emerged from that consultation and engagement that it has become clear there is this specific opportunity around the leisure and the leisure destination quadrant or triangle, if you like. It's also worth pointing out that the proposed funding source for this feasibility study is the Strategic Catalyst Property Investment Fund, and one of the terms of reference of that fund are that the funds drawn down from that source will be replenished when a project... Sorry, Councillor Cohen, could I ask you to sit down, please? Thank you. The funds drawn down from the Strategic Property Catalyst Investment Fund are replenished at the point of a feasibility study, moving from a feasibility study to a project actually being instigated. So this effectively will be a study that pays for itself, and I accept that isn't particularly clear in the wording of the report, and when we come to vote on it, I'll be proposing a slight amendment to the text that makes that absolutely clear, because I think it is important people understand that this isn't simply spending money on consultants that we will never see value from. I think Andrew wants to come in.
Yeah, just a quick point in answer to the time frame. It's a 10-week consultation, which includes a break over Christmas. So if we go forward today, it should be ready by the end of January, I would think, give or take.
Right. Councillor Cohen.
Thank you. Before we consider approving nearly £100,000 study on regeneration, I want to ask some important questions about whether this is the right approach for Hertsmere at this time. This kind of major regeneration planning is a big, long-term project. It could take at least 10 to 15 years to come to anything resembling completion, if it ever does. The reality is the final decision will not be ours to make. In just under 2 years, our council, as we know it, will be abolished because of local government reorganisation. New unitary councils are going to take over all responsibilities starting around April 2028. So the questions I want to raise are, is now the right time to start a project that spans well beyond this council's lifespan? Are we setting up our successor council to inherit tough decisions about whether or not to move ahead with plans they had no say in? Could this study end up being wasted money if the new council chooses a different path or cancels the project altogether? How would residents define the value of this report in light of these questions? We should clarify how this fits in with the wider timescales of local government reorganisation and also our emerging local plan. We need to know if Cabinet has considered the risks and costs of pushing ahead now versus waiting to have a clearer picture of Hertsmere's future governance before making large investments in long-term proposals. Also, it lacks any detail about councillor and resident engagement. Ultimately, as we know, it will not be us. It will be the new unitary authority that decides how regeneration happens in Borough Wood and elsewhere, not this council, not your administration. So let's make sure we're not burdening them with expensive decisions or unnecessary work. I want to hear from Cabinet about these points in detail, please, and I hope we can bring clarity to this important issue before committing public funds. And I have had many emails from residents about this.
Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The Tories in Hertsmere, they've given up, they've packed up their bags, they've closed their briefcases, they've stopped doing the work, and they've gone home already. They would like to see nothing happen, nothing move forward in this borough for the next 2 years, just because a bureaucratic process of local government reorganisation is taking place. It's exactly the same as the last 10 years of their administration, where there were plenty of excuses for doing nothing. Delivery never happened. This administration will continue to deliver for this area. We will deliver right up to the very last day if necessary. We will get key projects like this, like Bushy Golf and Country Club, which they left to fester, delivered. We'll get them delivered with spades in the ground to the point at which there is no return, so that whatever council, unitary council, ends up replacing this borough, that will certainly be more distant from the residents of this borough, will be bound into and tied into decisions that the residents of this borough elected us to take for their benefit and in their best interest. We're not interested in a race to the bottom. We're not interested in sitting around twiddling our thumbs for the next 2 or 3 years. We're insatiable in our appetite to get more projects delivered and more things done for this area. We've done more in the past 2.5 years than they did in a decade, and we'll do more in the next 2.5 years than they did in 2 decades. Members, Councillor Gray.
Yes, just a minor caveat to that. They're still taking their allowances, however, even though they have given up and gone home. Absolutely ridiculous. It's an absolutely fantastic report. I fully support going forward with this. We need to look at how we can release all the economic benefits that this will attract to the borough and to the town as a whole. So I'm fully supporting it.
Councillor Shenton.
Thank you, Leader. I think it's important, I think it's absolutely vital that we carry on with projects that extend beyond our term of office. It always would be the fact that we should carry on with projects that extend beyond our term of office. We should not waste money, we should not do anything because we are about to be superseded, but we certainly shouldn't stop doing things because we're going to be superseded. As Leader said, we will have some projects that have spades in the ground, we will have others that are feasibility studies with a future plan. But if we were only to do anything that we could fit within a 4-year period, we would be moribund, perhaps like we have been in the past. Thank you.
Councillor Richards.
Thank you, Chair. I fully agree with the report feasibility, and I would also welcome that amendment in terms of it being quite clear that regarding the funding coming back into the catalyst. But it strikes me that Councillor Cohen wants to have his cake and eat it. On the one hand, earlier on saying that we're yet again sort of hearing about the delays to the local plan, and then on the other hand, don't do anything in terms of localism and to benefit Borough Wood. It strikes me as incredibly odd. But yeah, this report has my full backing.
Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'm afraid we constantly have to listen to Councillor Cohen going on about the alleged delays in the local plan and telling everybody how we haven't got one. I think I saw something the other day where he claimed that I had claimed the local plan would be out in a couple of weeks. I don't recall ever saying that or anything like that. So here we have an important feasibility study which will become part of the regeneration of Borough Wood, which is a vital part to our local plan. You cannot have your cake and eat it. What do you want? Mayhem, I think, is what you're after.
Thank you. And of course, Councillor Oakley, the incorporation of the outcome of feasibility like this into the local plan, like the local plan itself, will be binding upon a future authority, as all local plans will continue to apply within their existing geographic boundaries for the period in which they continue to have planning validity. I think 18 years or thereabouts.
2040, Leader.
Councillor Giorgio.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. So when I look at this report, what really stands out for me is some of the site opportunities that are in the Appendix B, and looking at the map and some of the things that we can do in this area to improve the local area and to make sure that Boreham Wood continues to be a really important place for people to visit, for people to work, for people to travel through and to enjoy increased biodiversity and some of the other wonderful things that this opportunity could bring about. I think about kind of our foremothers and forefathers and some of the things that they might do when they would build cathedrals or build sewer systems that might take years and years to do. And I think about how, regardless of what other council takes over in the future under a new unitary, how wonderful actually it would be for them to come together as a new council and already have some plans that they can pick up and take forward, rather than coming together and having to start completely from scratch, as we have had to do with many of the things in this area. So I think that this report is excellent and really good way for us to bring about the regeneration of Boreham Wood and to fix some of the really dilapidated areas of this town which have really fallen apart for many years and which really are causing a real increase in the cost of living crisis for the people in this area because of all the loss of the amenities, the loss of the job opportunities and the loss of those civic spaces which they really, really need in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. In which case, if there are no further comments, I would like to invite Cabinet to approve the appointment of the consultant set out in recommendation 2.1 of this report to carry out the deliverables laid down in Appendix A. Secondly, to approve the budget and funding source as set out in paragraph 2.2 with the additional sentence added, this sum to be replenished in accordance with the terms of the fund. And finally, to authorise the Director of Place and Transformation, the Head of Asset Management Engineering Services, in consultation with the portfolio holder, myself, to finalise the precise contractual terms and issue formal instructions. Is that agreed? Thank you, members.
Councillor Newmark, I've got a point to make, please, because I think you are misleading us.
Sorry, Councillor Cohen. Is this a point of to what agenda item? Sorry, Councillor Cohen. Sorry, Councillor Cohen. There is absolutely no facility for you to seek to divert us from our agenda again. I've made it absolutely clear how we will treat the request to handle the report from the Scrutiny Task and Finish group, and that is what we will do. Agenda item 8.2 is bad debt write-offs 2025-2026. I'd like to ask Councillor Shenton.
Thank you, Leader. This goes hand in hand with a part of the confidential agenda which lists the bad debts, so I won't talk at great length about it and just repeat myself later on. We have £340,000 of debt that is of less than 5,000 and so is written off by the Head of Finance, and £246,000 of which Hertsmere is liable for 65,000, which is our responsibility to write off. It's important that we don't hold a debt that is never going to be repaid. Our debts would appear to be going down. I check with the Head of Finance at our weekly meetings all the time about whether we have any realistic chance of recovering these debts. We conclude that we haven't, and it is essential that we know how much money we've got and don't carry these phantom amounts. So I recommend that we accept the recommendations, and as I say, in the confidential part, we will explain some of the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shenton. Visiting members? No. Cabinet members? No, in which case I just may thank Councillor Shenton and Matthew Bunyan and the finance team for all of the work that goes into debt management. And I have to say, having sort of looked back at the numbers of bad debt write-offs, the total quantum, it's very clear to me that what we are seeing now is a consistent reduction in the amount that we're being asked to write off, which is, I think, very welcome news and very welcome progress indeed. So thank you. Are members happy to agree the recommendations in that report?
Agreed.
Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item 8.3, which is additional resource to fund the Article 4 HMO project. Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Leader. Obviously, we recognise there is a growing problem with HMOs in Potters Bar in particular. We've heard a little bit about the Task and Finish group who have looked at HMOs. And in tandem with that, we made a commitment to look at the possibility of introducing an Article 4 direction to restrict planning in relation to HMOs. It's not a straightforward thing. We have to look at various aspects of it. And we have already said that it could take a year in order to do that. And there's absolutely no guarantee that an Article 4 direction would be allowed. But we feel it's really important to support the concerns of residents in Potters Bar in relation to the numbers that are constantly going up. Now, despite what Councillor Cohen is always going on about, our policy team are absolutely 110% committed to producing the local plan. So we don't have spare capacity in that team. We also feel that we need some expertise from people who have actually produced the necessary research and reports and submitted Article 4 directions in the past. And so therefore our proposal is that we actually hire someone, not as a staff member, but as an additional resource to the policy team to actually carry out the work for us. Now, in order to do that, we are seeking additional funding of £150,000 to actually do this. And so the recommendation is that we take this to full council to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley, and thank you for your really solid work in progressing our war on the inappropriate proliferation of HMOs around the borough. I think this represents serious and solid progress, and it will provide us with the expertise and capacity within the planning department that will enable us to get this over the line within the timeline that we had outlined. I think there are people out there that seem to want us to spend more time and resource talking about this and putting out communications and actually getting the job done, but I know the focus with yourself and the department has actually been to get the job done, and obviously today's proposal, which will then go on to council, is the first significant milestone in moving this forward. Visiting members, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, this is such a strong topic amongst the community in Potters Bar, where I live and know how strong this is. And it's a shame tonight has come to this, because we could have dealt with this in a much kinder, calmer, more courteous manner for those residents at home watching who really do support this, but didn't get to see the whole rounded picture in a really respectful way. So yes, I strongly support this proposal for additional funding to appoint an HMO consultant to take forward this Article 4 direction. And quite simply, we need to act now. The Task and Finish Group's recommendations are clear. Our borough urgently needs tighter control over the rapid spread of HMOs, stronger enforcement and a more balanced approach that protects both tenants and our communities. An Article 4 direction is the key tool to achieve that, but it will only work if we move quickly and resource it properly. The concerns are clear. What's been missing is a dedicated professional capacity to bring all of that together, to build the technical case, manage the consultation, and guide the process through to adoption. That is exactly what this consultant will provide. Without this support, we risk delay. And with every month that passes, more unregulated conversions can occur, undermining the very policy we are trying to instigate. Residents are rightly asking questions about why it has taken so long, and we need action, we need progress, and we need communication. This isn't about blocking housing, it's about balance, protecting our housing stock, ensuring good standards, and giving residents confidence that the council is in control. The consultant will help us turn the Task and Finish Group's recommendations into reality and ensure Article 4 is enacted lawfully. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Councillor Oakley to come back. I mean, my understanding is that the proposal is for a consultant to progress primarily the Article 4 direction rather than anything specifically emanating from the Task and Finish Group, but maybe you can help us clarify that.
I mean, I think the information that has been gleaned from this, I actually sat through 2 of the sessions, which I found extremely interesting, as the Task and Finish Group kind of questioned officers on this. So I think that's a very useful exercise. A lot of it dealt with housing policy rather than the planning aspect. So although there's a degree of overlap, they are quite separate. The Article 4 direction is looking purely at the planning aspects of this. Part of the so it's the technical expertise in producing the case for why we should have an Article 4 direction. I'll have to say, historically, in the borough, under the previous administration, there were 2 Article 4 directions that were put forward, and the previous government threw both of those out. So there's no hard and fast guarantee we get it. But if we have consultants with expertise in this area, they can put forward the strongest possible case for the Article 4 direction. Part of the process also involves consultation as well, and that is why it has to be done over that time period. There's no quick fix here. There's no kind of fast track in order to get it through. If we do not prepare the case properly, then there is a much greater risk of it being thrown out. And I think that needs to be understood by opposition members and by residents, that we are doing this and we will be doing it properly.
Thank you, Councillor Oakley. Councillor Rosehill.
Thank you. Yes, so I get to my HMO question. We know this is obviously incredibly important to residents, particularly in Potters Bar, which is traditionally and probably previously a Labour stronghold. I'm just disappointed that everything has taken this amount of time. So we've had 2.5 years of this administration coming up to, and we know that this is incredibly important and almost policy that maintains our situation in Hertsmere. So it's incredibly important. Why hasn't it come to fruition earlier? One of the other aspects I was going to ask is, why are we hiring before a policy has even come into place? But obviously, I've heard from Councillor Oakley that this is to create the policy. What is happening with enforcement?
Yeah, I think there might be a bit of confusion there. But Councillor Oakley, do you want to explain again?
Yeah, Councillor Rosehill, the whole process here is for us to make a planning case for having an Article 4 direction, which will actually restrict some of the applications that are coming forward. Now, you mentioned how long it is actually taken. What you do have to understand is again, this is not a planning consideration, but the licensing of HMOs, which comes under housing, means that you only require a license if it's for 6 persons or more. So many HMOs historically have come through almost, under the radar. And Potters Bar has always had a large number of HMOs in order to service the Royal Veterinary College, because they have a very transient population doing their work experience and their training there. And it's only become apparent through the planning process and through some very sharp-eyed residents that the problem has really been brought to our attention. It's very easy, you know, if you're doing small-scale HMOs, to proceed quite anonymously and until it becomes kind of obvious in the licensing terms that there's a proliferation. And part of it is because having kind of exercised everything you possibly can in surrounding boroughs, you then come along to Hertsmere and look at a potential place where you can make a great deal of money.
Yeah, I think the numbers show that the quantum of licensed HMOs in Potters Bar doubled in 1 year, and I think in the previous year they increased by 30 to 40%. Before that point, numbers had remained fairly static and constant. You know, we weren't seeing the level of noise from residents that we've seen in recent months until recent months. And members will also recall that it's now some months ago that I made the announcement to council that we were going to proceed with an Article 4 direction, and it was members of your, I was going to say your group, but your previous group, who stood up and actually said, well, no, can you hold on? Can you wait until we've finished our task and finish group before you start work on this? Well, if we'd listened to them and waited, then things would have been delayed even further. What we've got today is a milestone, is solid progress. We remain on the anticipated timeline of 1 year from start to finish to deliver an Article 4 that is robust and mitigates an awful lot of the risk of it being overturned by central government or on appeal from developers. Councillor Cohen.
I think if you'd allowed us to present our task, Councillor Sullivan and myself, to present the task and finish, you'd have seen a lot of the recommendations would have answered some of these questions. So I ask that if you will allow us to present it at the end of this item. But talking about item 8.3, I want to start by saying we absolutely recognise the value of houses in multiple occupation, HMOs. They play an important role in providing affordable homes for young people, key workers and those starting out. But we've also heard the growing concern from our residents, particularly in Potters Bar, about the rapid increase and the real impact that that's having on our streets, our parking and the sense of community. That's why months ago we announced the task and finish review to HMOs, because residents deserved a serious look at stronger licensing, tougher enforcement and better planning controls. And then, just before our review began, you, Councillor Newmark, jumped up in full council and announced that the administration, as you said, would bring forward an Article 4 direction for Potters Bar. That was 4 months ago. 4 months of urgency, and yet only tonight are we being asked to approve the funding to start the process. No draft evidence base, no timetable, not even the beginnings of a plan. Residents are rightly asking what's been happening for the last 4 months. This delay is exactly what undermines people's trust in politics. Big announcements, but no follow-through. And I have to ask, why do we need £150,000 for a consultant just to start? We have skilled, experienced directors, officers and planners in this council who could have begun building the evidence base months ago. We didn't need to wait for this paper to get started. So let's be honest, the concern from residents is real. The evidence of over-concentration is growing and the need for a proper Article 4 direction is clear, but it's actions that count, not headlines. I ask Councillor Newmark if he will show his seriousness and commitment to deal with HMOs and will commit to not wait the normal 8 weeks, 2 months to report back on the HMO task and finish, treat this with the seriousness it deserves and get back to us at the next Cabinet meeting. You are, sir.
I note your opposition to spending additional resource to ensure that we can move this HMO Article 4 project to the next step.
Sorry, I haven't said that.
Sorry.
Residents, I have not said that. Can you take it back, please? I have never said that.
Sorry, Councillor Cohen, this is my Cabinet meeting. You are here as a guest. as a visitor, and I will ask you not to disrupt, because the next time you do, we will have to remove you. Councillor Cohen, this is your final warning. I also note the request that we use existing officer resource instead of spending additional funds, investing them in this important imperative. And as a former planning portfolio holder, the member cannot be unaware that the impact of using existing officer resource would be to cause serious delays for the local plan and make it a lot more difficult to reply to the persistent emails he sends requesting complex responses from officers within 5 working days. Members, Councillor Giorgio.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. First of all, I'd like to say that, yes, I agree that we should be spending this money in order to procure additional resource in order to deliver the Article 4 HMO post properly. And part of the reason for that, and something that hasn't been brought up so far, is to prevent this council being liable for claims from people who have homes who have maybe were in the process of becoming a HMO, or maybe in the process of carrying out works under permitted development, who then may be liable to have a claim against this council as a result of us not properly putting in place a HMO policy and an Article 4 policy to make sure that people are kind of forewarned and make sure we do that in the proper way. And so I think it's important that we get somebody with experience to be able to do this. And so I think the cost of doing so, the £150,000 in total that we're looking for here, actually in terms of the cost that we could face as a council as a result of not doing this properly, is potentially small money in comparison. So I think for that reason, I think it's important that we take this seriously, we make sure we have a person who is responsible for this and who can do it properly, and that we don't rush into doing this in a way which causes undue cost to our taxpayers, as I've mentioned before, especially during a cost of living crisis. We don't want to be in a situation where we've had to give lots of money of really hard-earned taxpayer money away to the very developers who would have those claims against us, who are also putting forward HMOs. Thank you.
Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think it's quite important to understand and kind of reiterate what an Article 4 is. It's a requirement to be placed on developers who want to convert houses into HMOs to actually have to submit a planning application. But that planning application will still have to be assessed on its individual merits. What we're looking to do is fund a specialist to actually prepare that case to go forward so that actually we can make the changes to our planning law to allow that to happen. Why anybody would have an issue with spending money to allow us to do that, to address a problem that has recently become evident in Potter's Bar. Obviously, circumstances have dictated, as Councillor Oakley has alluded to, the transient nature of the high-quality vet students that we have there. There has always been a artificially high number of HMOs. So, yes, I'm fully supportive of this and will be supportive of it going forward.
If there are no further comments from members, I would like to invite Cabinet to recommend to Council that additional funding of £150,000 be provided towards a temporary position and associated activities to seek to bring forward an Article 4 in respect of houses of multiple occupation. Is that agreed? Thank you. And now, whilst we're on the topic of HMOs, at a very logical point in the agenda, if I may say so, I will accede to the request from the lead member of the Task and Finish group to present the recommendations arising from that Task and Finish group. And I want to be very clear about what's going to happen, because her colleague talked about us making a report. This is a report from the lead member, and according to the advice from our Democratic Services team, this is a report specifically on the recommendations. I will allow Cabinet to sort of ask questions in response to that, but the matter will be debated by Cabinet, and a formal response to those recommendations will happen within the next 8 weeks, not at this evening's meeting. Councillor Sullivan, can I ask you to present the recommendations?
Thank you, Chair. And it's not unusual for recommendations to be put forward to Cabinet, like Councillor Butler did in February 2024 for the enforcement task and finish, which he did, and that was minuted. He did present in this way. So thank you for allowing me this opportunity. Unfortunately, it came to that whole debacle, but thank you anyway. So before you tonight, we have pages 7 to 93. So this is an in-depth report. We have evidence here. We have the report. The report itself is 9 pages, and it's on page 7 of your Cabinet pack. The Task and Finish group on housing and multiple occupation was established following significant concerns from residents in Potters Bar about the accelerating growth of HMOs and their impact on safety, housing standards, and the wider community. The starting principle for our group is the clear understanding that HMOs are a valuable part of the housing mix, offering more affordable accommodation for people who are likely not to be able to afford flats or houses in our town. Potters Bar is an ideal location for people who work in local hospitals, schools, and vet college students. We recognise the overwhelming majority are well managed, clean, and cause no problems to neighbours. This report aims to target those who do not uphold those high standards and to find practical solutions and a balance to the exponential growth of HMOs. It is important to highlight the number of supporting appendices to this report, which include the amenity standards draft updates, licensing examples, mapping of existing HMOs, and visuals of the current website's look and feel. These will help Cabinet members to gain a clear understanding of the issues described. After 3 formal meetings and consultation with officers and local stakeholders, the group has made 6 key recommendations. First, the group recommends that the Council make an Article 4 direction for all 4 wards of Potters Bar. This would remove the automatic right to convert single dwellings into HMOs without planning permission, allowing the Council to better manage the scale and distribution of such properties. An immediate Article 4 direction was early discounted by this administration, so this group has not considered this. I know there is an item later on in this agenda, which is currently gone, for funding towards consultancy to start the process of an Article 4. Second, the Council should introduce additional licensing powers under the Housing Act 2004. This would extend licensing requirements to smaller HMOs, those housing 3 or 4 tenants, improving regulation, safety and oversight. The application of additional licensing powers is the single most effective tool in a local authority's armoury to have control on HMO standards. We acknowledge the vast majority of HMO landlords want to be good landlords. We do not see any reason why this would be not supported by stakeholders. We've included a case study from Woking Council to show how this could work for Hertsmere. Third, the Council should adopt the updated HMO amenity standards policy, incorporating officers' proposals and the group's further recommendations. These include clearer requirements of bathroom sizes, bin storage, regular landlord inspections, mains-powered smoke and carbon monoxide alarms, outside lighting and clear tenant information signage. These updated standards can be read from pages 19 of this Cabinet pack. Fourth, the HMO section of the Council's website should be comprehensively redesigned to include practical information for tenants, landlords and local residents, with a clear system for logging and directing concerns to the appropriate team. Communication is key. It is key for empowering residents. It is key to enhance understanding of HMO's licensing and planning processes and where to go for support. It is our role to make this clear and not for residents to go through hoops to understand. Additionally, the work on this page will be key to set out our expectation to landlords and tenants who live in Hertsmere. Fifth, the group recommends the creation of a dedicated HMO officer. This would enhance enforcement capacity, improve public communication and relieve existing pressure on the private sector housing team. We have an amazing team here in Hertsmere and they need to be equipped to deal with the workload and challenges they are facing. This role would help bolster enforcement activity, including landlord checks and issuing of improvement orders where needed. We know the team with the work stream in this area is ever increasing and it's prudent to give them the tools they need now. And finally, a review of supplementary planning documents, SPDs, should be undertaken in parallel with the local plan work to establish clearer guidance on the concentration and location of HMOs within communities. These can explore concentrations of HMOs, parking requirements and design standards. In summary, these recommendations aim to balance the continued provision of affordable accommodation with the need to maintain community stability, improve standards and ensure effective local oversight. I see this exercise as a multi-layered approach to an issue identified by residents. It offers robust solutions that have longevity and that create a healthy environment for neighbours, tenants and the broader community. I would like to thank officers, my fellow members of the Task and Finish Group, and a special thanks to Alex Moore for putting our thoughts and discussions into this report. And we reiterate again that we would like to ask Cabinet to not wait the normal 8 weeks' time to report back. We feel this should be treated with the seriousness it deserves and get back to us in as short a time as possible so that we can get this moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Also to echo your thanks to the other members of the Task and Finish Group who aren't here this evening, Councillor Butler, Councillor Clarkson, Councillor Handley. I would like to just kick off with one brief. So I said who aren't here this evening. You've already identified yourself as a member of that group, Councillor Cohen. But I would like to sort of ask one question. Given Councillor Cohen's remarks a few moments ago, suggesting that rather than spend additional resource on the consultant, we should use existing departmental resource. And obviously, one of your recommendations is to move forward with this consultant, and you've asked for an early meeting with them. And you're also recommending resource be spent on a dedicated HMO member of staff within the department moving forward once the Article 4 direction is in place. So is Councillor Cohen representing an updated view of your Task and Finish group? Is he sort of speaking as a minority opinion within it? And is it the position of the Task and Finish group that you support the appointment of this HMO consultant to move the Article 4 forward, or that you request that's done within existing resource? Because I think it's important that in the time between now and the forthcoming meeting of council, the portfolio holder understands exactly whether or not there is support for this resource to be spent.
So because Councillor Cohen didn't get to read his last sentence, I will read it out for you. He says, and it's important to clarify before that, we didn't say not to spend money on consultant. What we said is work could have already begun before we employ a consultant. Could we have done some early work on evidence gathering? It wasn't saying that we didn't need a consultant to bring this forward. It was saying, could work have started? But Councillor Cohen's last line was, so yes, I will support this moving forward because residents want results, not excuses. But Cabinet must now set out a clear timetable with visible milestones, regular public updates and accountability of those deadlines.
Yes, sorry, Councillor, thank you. As I said, we're talking about the recommendations of the report. I don't want to stray off that. Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Leader. I've got 2 points, but I'll put them together to make it quicker. Could we have started earlier? Could we have put the resource? No, we couldn't. We've got the local plan. You can't have your cake and eat it. That's the first point. The second point is you've asked for an additional SPD. We have the same thing there about resource issues. For an SPD, I mean, you know, there are other SPDs we want to review, but in relation to the local plan, yes, there's a serious resource issue, and we would need to go away and contemplate that one. I couldn't give you an absolute yes to 2.6 on that one in terms of moving forward.
Do members have questions for Councillor Sullivan? Councillor Gray.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I have read the report. And are you going to listen, or are you just going to talk amongst yourselves? We can get you a private room if you wish.
Sorry, it's just that Councillor Newmark said the report wasn't in the pack, so I'm glad that people
this is
have
the
read
thing.
it.
I'm coming to this point because, again, this is the second piece of work that's come out of Task and Finish Group with no evidence backing it up or behind it, just a list of recommendations. What I'm looking here is a set of standards that were amended in April 2018. I'm looking at a presentation that was given by our Housing Department to the Task and Finish Group, but no comments from the Task and Finish Group itself. And then I'm looking at Woking's kind of proposal, which is very detailed. I wouldn't expect you to go into that level of detail, but I mean, I would have even expected you to have broken down the areas of Potters Bar where the HMOs are clustered. There's a map on in your report that kind of has red dots on it, that has about 65 red dots on it. There's no indication of what that is apart from saying it's licensed HMOs, but there's less dots than there is in the report where it says we've got over 75 and 15 pending. There's nothing in the report to look at, or I'm not saying you haven't looked at it, you haven't evidenced in that report the breakdown per ward, the number of houses, the number of people who live in those areas, the makeup of the tenancies, so we can look at the percentage of HMOs. We don't know anything about kind of the current trends that are being reported into this council about HMOs, so whether there's damp and mould issues, heating issues, the concerns that the residents living in HMOs are raising with the landlords and getting nowhere and then reporting to us as a council. You could have easily evidenced that. There's no crime information in here. A simple search and an ask of our local police inspector would have given you the crime reporting, and it would have been interesting to see if there is a correlation in antisocial behaviour rising with the increase of HMOs that are in Potter's Bar. That could have easily been evidence. There is nothing in this report that shows the actual workings of the Task and Finish group. Finally, I hear from Councillor Sullivan, who is very keen on talking to the community and taking the community's view. There's not a single piece of information here to prove what the community has said to you. Where's the evidence base from all these emails that you seem to have from community members raising these issues? Surely that would have been a starting point for an understanding of a Task and Finish group to see where the problems lie and how they can be addressed. So Councillor Cohen jumps up and down quite often in shouting that he's the lead scrutineer. Probably the first recommendation on this report would be to consider whether he should still stay as the lead scrutineer, because if I was producing this, I'd be deeply embarrassed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan. Sorry, Councillor Cohen, this is an opportunity for Councillor Sullivan as the lead scrutiny member on this Task and Finish group to engage with questions from the Cabinet. If you're not going to allow that to happen, consistently talk across and distract, I really am going to have to act further. And Councillor Sullivan, do you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the HMO register, so that is a visual given by a member of the community, so that only shows licensed HMOs. We don't actually know how many are unlicensed at the moment, and that is part of the problem, whereas we know from visual audits and from, you know, discussions with the community, we also know from the meeting, the public meeting, which was packed out at the cricket club, that Councillor Newmark, myself, you were there, and other members, to know the feeling. I think, you know, we said before, if we know the concerns, we know the issues, we do know the amount of enforcement logs that are going in. I don't know why we would need to do that level of detail, because the level of detail is about steps forward. We know there's an issue. There are clear concerns. We don't know how many are licensed, and that is the issue. We don't have a mechanism at the moment until Renters Reform Bill that will allow us to actually have that put down. So I don't know why we wouldn't put forward sensible recommendations.
That's a simple question.
Yeah. Yeah, part 4 is discussions we've had in the group meetings. We have spoken to the police, we have spoken to other local authorities. The fact of perception, yeah, but if we've either got a concern or we don't, and if you don't feel you want to support this, that's in your own right. If you feel that there isn't a concern with HMOs in Potter's Bar, that is your right to not vote for this and to not move recommendations forward. I think at the moment what we're not saying to residents is, we don't believe you, there's no concern, it's your perception and HMOs coming in next year. We know through planning, we're working on this. I thought this was something we were working cross-party together with Councillor Butler, with Councillor Handley, with Councillor Clarkson. I didn't think this was going to be something we were fighting about in the chamber where we want to move forward. Councillor Oakley was amazing in those groups where we were on the same page with those amenity standards. In this document, it does show you the changes that could be made, and they were really sensible. It was taking out those bits of interpretation for landlords, and why would we not want to do that? I'm quite bamboozled by it, actually. I don't understand. We've put the reasons for the recommendation in part 5 here. You know, it needs to be drafted with member input. We wanted to know about licensing, what more we can be done. We'd have licensing fee income. We've acknowledged that we need more officer power. We need that, and we've asked for that, like we've asked for the consultant for the Article 4. So I'm really unsure why we need to prove there's an issue with HMO if there's consensus that there is something that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. That was very helpful indeed. I think you're doing really well when you don't have Councillor Cohen whispering what to say into your ear, and we should continue on that basis. Are there any further questions for Councillor Sullivan? Yes, Councillor Gray.
Just to come back on a few points, and while I don't don't take away from the fact that there was work done. It's not being evidenced. This is the second report where we don't see this. You mentioned there was a fantastic presentation with Councillor Oakley and the information was gathered there. Why hasn't it been detailed? You've taken a map from a resident that counteracts the numbers that we're reporting on there. So there's a lot of anomalies. Nobody's saying that we haven't got an issue with HMOs, and I'm keen to sort it out, hence why I've just agreed to spend the best part of £150,000 to get a consultant in to deal with the issue and deal with it properly. My hope was that this would complement the work that the officer in charge of getting an Article 4 direction put in place would do, but it hasn't. It hasn't helped at all.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Councillor Newmark. So point 4.2 shows that there is a 3,000 person signed signature that has been delivered to the offices, and that has on that header of that petition outlines many of the items in here. So we're all working to the same thing. That's what people are signing against. I can't put it in here because it wasn't submitted until after, but what I have put in here is under 4.2 is that members recognise concerns by residents, and there is a 3,000 plus signature petition being delivered to council, which will come cabinet, I'm sure, in due course. But are we going to dispute that, or are we just going to understand that there is a concern here? Councillor Newmark stood up in council in July saying, we know there's an issue, we're moving forward with something, we will attack this, but why do we need to go back and evidence it now? Loads of task and finish groups don't have evidence. The one about enforcement officers that Councillor Butler worked on didn't have any evidence to go on because it was a brand new project. So I don't think it's a prerequisite that we have to do that.
Thank you. No, look, we do welcome the petition. I certainly encourage the petition and encourage people to sign it. And I think that in due course it will form an important part even of that evidence base. Look, I think we've had a lively and helpful discussion. I think that, as Councillor Sullivan said, there is an all-party commitment to deliver on these issues. And if there is passionate debate, it is effectively debate around tactics rather than principles. I think it's right and proper that we as a cabinet take the time to consult with officers and experts to do these recommendations justice and come back with a properly considered response. I note the request that we do so somewhat earlier than the 8-week statutory period, and we will do our best to do so, but not at the expense of looking at them properly, and I hope that's appreciated. So let's draw that item to a close. And I think that brings us to agenda item 9, which is any other business considered urgent by the chair. There is none. Agenda item 10, the date of the next meeting. The next meeting is an extraordinary meeting of the Cabinet scheduled for 9 p.m. on the 19th of November after the extraordinary meeting of full council on local government reorganisation. And the next ordinary meeting of the Cabinet is scheduled for 6 p.m. on the 10th of December 2025. I'll now move on to agenda item 11, exclusion of the public under the Local Government Act, to move